I'm very aware that this shirt isn't very flattering, but neither is like 90% of any of the visual stuff going on in my videos, so I forgot to bring my laptop here. Don't know why. I'm gonna go do that now. So I've switched almost completely from Apple. I've still got an iPad, but I do have like an Android phone and I've got like a Windows laptop now. So I don't know how editing is going to go. This is kind of just gonna be like a ranting video on Dr. Phil because I've wanted to kind of make a ranting video about Dr. Phil for quite a while now, but I'd never had like anything come out about him so that my video timing could line up with his like scandal or whatever. I mean, it's not like this is really like big news, but I found it on like a Quora thing because I'm part of like this group. The title of the article is Dr. Phil thinks smoking weed makes you violent and lowers IQ. Now, I was never really a fan of Dr. Phil in the first place. I've heard, this is everything I say in this video is alleged information, but I've heard that like whenever he brings on people to his show, he tells them to act very extra. I'm assuming he'll like take that like personality traits that they already have and tells them to be like it's extra obnoxious with them, and that's what makes the characters weird and like wacky and all that. But whenever I watched his videos, I just always thought that he wasn't very therapeutic. I just never thought that he was like, he acted in a way that a psychologist was supposed to act. He's not a qualified psychologist, by the way, just throwing that out there, but I'm pretty sure he does have like something in the field so that he's like somewhat educated. He's very opinionated in the way that he does all of his psychologist stuff. His views are always very conservative. Like, one of the videos that pissed me off, I think it was the title more than video. I don't remember how he acted in the video, but he was very snarky about it. I do remember. But like basically one of the guests or whatever the fuck was like a sugar baby, and he just like kept hammering that home about how like he didn't say anything obviously, but like he thought that she was like gross and like slutty and just like that's her line of work, leave her alone. He's just very judgmental, I think is the word. I don't think anyone goes to him anymore, at least, for like actual problems. I think it's now just like teenagers that want to get a bit of clout. But I skimmed through the article. They have the video that I have not watched yet, so this is my first interpretations of the video. I semi-like the start of the video because he goes on to say that if your child is acting up, you have to do something about it. Essentially, that's essentially, like, he doesn't really, that isn't like the main message. The main message is if your child is throwing a tantrum or if your child is acting up, you have to deal with it as soon as possible because it's just gonna get worse. But I do kind of like how he is putting at least some responsibility on the parents, because every single time, I don't think he's ever actually put them on the parents, no matter how obvious it is that they're the fucked up ones. Like, remember that PewDiePie video where the parents and some other people from Dr. Phil kidnapped the child and brought her onto TV and then like forced her to go to the ranch or whatever the fuck? I don't really know, but like it was kidnapping. They kidnapped the child. And that was just like a normal thing. Like that's... So the first time I've ever heard him say like, you need to fix your child, even if it is in a certain way, in a way that doesn't really help, because it's not telling them how to deal with it, or, you know, don't be an asshole when trying to discipline your child, but like...
He had it in his hand and he was like... I went up to him and I said, look, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And he said, I'm gonna stab you with it. And I said, if you're gonna do it, do it.
Okay, this is like not as big of a problem, but I do just kind of want to like nitpick for a bit. Don't do that, because that's not how parenting works. Don't do that. Just I understand that like the child is like out of control or whatever, but I feel like if you're bragging about like trying to like one up your child, it's a sign that it was because your parenting sucked. I'm not saying it is, because I don't know how good they were at parenting before this happened, but, you know, just a little nitpicking kind of thing. Okay, so he says that, like, smoking marijuana at a young age is not a good idea. I do agree with that. It's, like, not the best because it will make you dependent on it, but it's not, like, the worst thing. I feel like focusing on, like, drinking at a young age would be more of a problem because that is physically addictive. He's right to a certain extent. Marijuana does, like, mess up your brain to a certain extent. He's making it sound like it's really, really bad. It does mess with your brain a little bit, but I feel like he's treating this issue so much harsher. Is that like English, don't know. But he's treating it like it's the worst thing you could possibly do as a child. It isn't a good idea, but neither is a lot of things that you could point out, such as drinking, such as getting addicted to like literally anything, and you can't physically get addicted to weed. You can become dependent on it, and it is likely if you are young, but withdrawals, not a thing. But he then says like, you know, it's bad, you know, it messes up with your brain, and this is not just like opinion, this is like science, this is facts. And it's like, well, if you're going to be so hard on facts, why can't you accept that it has good stuff to do with it as well? The article says that he said that it makes you violent. I haven't gotten to that part yet because this is like the first time he's talked about it, but no. The person in the video is, you know, he smokes marijuana and he happens to also be violent, but those two things aren't hand in hand. Obviously, I don't know what strain he's smoking, but like, it doesn't make you violent. If anything, it makes you the opposite of that. It makes you really chill. He says that your IQ and your motivation will drop, which is true. I don't know how much the IQ part is true. Okay, I don't really know what I was saying here, so I'm just going to read off this thing that I found off theguardian.com. Typically, people who smoke marijuana from a young age do end up scoring low on IQ tests, though it's only about 2 IQ points. But then they statistically adjusted for differences in rates of other substance use along with other factors including childhood, behavioral problems, and mental health symptoms. And after that, cannabis use no longer predicted lower IQ scores. And for motivation, if you are a heavy smoker or if you started smoking at a young age, then it does tend to result in lack of motivation. But I also found on another website that though it does make you less motivated, it also makes you less prone to psychosis. Again, it's not the worst thing in the world, and he focuses on this so much. Okay, apparently that was the end, so now the very research scientific response that I couldn't really give, which is now going to be given from the article. So the article says there's evidence that says brains continue to develop into a person's 20s, but that's about the most positive thing we can say about the statement. Dr. Phil's computer analogy is out of touch with the evidence. Pouring water into a computer would destroy the computer and kill all the connections. While weed relaxes some of the chemicals created by the brain that cause anxiety or pain, there is no evidence that any type of rewiring is taking place. A spokesman for Dr. Phil told Vice the computer comment is a metaphor about how weed impairs cognitive efficiency, especially at young ages. Disagreeing with the metaphor should not prompt you or Vice to essentially suggest marijuana use for a 11-year-old should be condoned. Head of Clinical Pharmacology and Toxicology at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center said it's ludicrous to equate smoking cannabis with pouring water on a computer. It can have potential risks, but the idea that it causes permanent serious damage is sensational. Maybe Dr. Phil should redirect hyperbole to alcohol, tobacco, opiates, benzols, etc., all of which are considerably more harmful and is exploiting your troubled preteen on natural That's what I said. That is what I said. Dr. Phil said that even occasional marijuana smokers will look at multi-point drop in IQ. Even with just occasional use, like once a week or like 2 or 3 times a month, you'll see IQ and motivation drop across time. In reality, there is no evidence to back up this claim. 3 separate studies showed that cannabis use had little impact on cognitive function or IQ decline in adolescents. One study showed that the small impact in cognitive function went away after the person abstained from consuming weed for 72 hours. A spokesman for Dr. Phil said that the information came from a 2012 study. However, that study did not control for socioeconomic status. And Verbera, I don't know. They said it's been debunked, essentially. Dr. Phil said for a 10-year-old child to be smoking marijuana, he's self-medicating his anxiety, so you have to understand why I said this child can't go home. Dr. Phil goes on to say that if JJ's mum refuses to send him for treatment, I have to report it within 24 hours and the child will be removed. Young people who use cannabis are self-medicating anxiety with cannabis, and that could be better addressed with other treatment options such as therapy, medication, and exercise. However, he also said that Dr. Phil's messaging, including the use of the word dope, only further stigmatizes cannabis consumers, which is another problem I kind of want to talk about. I feel like the main problem is the stigma. Like, it honestly isn't that bad. You can do your own research about it, because I don't want to be the person who's like, weed isn't that bad, and then say something wrong and then be the one person that like is always referred to, because like I was that dumb bitch who couldn't do her own research. But like, if you want to like look into it, do your own research. It honestly isn't that bad. It's not a big deal. No intelligent physician or doctor would ever use the word dope to describe cannabis. I love this comment. A public health policy expert and a professor at a university said it appears that JJ and his family have a lot of complex emotional and behavioral issues aside from cannabis use, Yes. Kids with complex problems drop out or don't succeed in school because those problems are not addressed. Occasional cannabis use is not the risk here. Both Hayden and Verbera said that the situation could be grounds for Child Protective Services to get involved, but it depends on factors we don't know. We don't know if this is casual use, episodic use, or whether it's genuinely causing harm. Another claim made was that it causes violence. While Dr. Phil didn't outright say this, the framing of JJ as a gun-toting, pot-smoking kid, along with the photo of him smoking weed and holding a gun, seems to imply that cannabis is tied to his violent tendencies. I feel like, even if he hasn't said this in a video before, I feel like Dr. Phil's the kind of person who would have said, weed causes violence in a video before. I do believe that he believes that because he clearly has some very old-fashioned, just debunked opinions on weed. He can say it's science all he wants. A lot of what he says, or at least a lot of the ways that he says things about weed, is very opinionated, very old-fashioned, and very conservative. In reality, there is no data that suggests that cannabis consumption causes aggressive behavior. Quote, I've treated 5,000 patients and 5,000 out of my 5,000 says cannabis makes them feel relaxed and calm. However, people who use more than one substance and alcohol or stimulants would be more likely to cause aggression. I'm pretty sure I said this. I'm pretty sure Snoop Dogg has like a quote about this where like you put 100 people who hate each other in a room, give them a bit of weed, and they'll end up like taking selfies and all that cool shit. Whereas you could put 4 people in a room with a bottle of alcohol and one of them's gonna end up dead. But like cannabis doesn't make you aggressive. It doesn't make you violent. That's just not a thing ever. It's never been a thing. Because he said it was because of like self-medication for his anxiety. I don't know how he could like know that, because obviously like if it's self-medication for anxiety, it's gonna make you calm, right? Because that's like the opposite of anxiety. So how can you be calm and violent and aggressive at the same time? It just doesn't really connect. It's concerning that Dr. Phil is linking violence in teens to weed when there seems to be a lot more going on in JJ's case. Yes. The spokesman said that most of the online teaser for the show focused on JJ's violent behavior, not his weed smoking. The clip posted online was called Unfiltered: How Marijuana Affects the Brain. JJ's extreme behavior at just 11 is Dr. Phil's cause for a warning based on research provided to him from various credible studies. The problem is that the show conflated, or at least did not clearly distinguish between JJ's violent behavior and his cannabis consumption. Both the Dr. Phil episode and the article didn't have as much substance as I thought it was gonna have. But overall, this is just Dr. Phil being stupid, I think, in my opinion. I don't know if he still wants to, but if he seriously still wants to have his show to like help people and not just for like teens to come in, want to get famous, and him telling them to overreact. But if he genuinely wants to help troubled teens and all that, he needs to educate himself. He needs to realize that the tiny ass brain in his bald ass head does not contain enough accurate information for him to be spouting absolute shit like this. A lot of what he says is just so like outside of this episode, like I said, is just so judgmental. He's just so old-fashioned. He's not living in today's society, and he doesn't speak on the serious issues more than he speaks about shit like cannabis use and like being a sugar baby and all that shit. Like, you need to focus on actual shit and like how to fix that shit. You can't just send everyone to the ranch. You can't just judge everyone for having an active sex life. You have to actually tell the parents how to like stop fucking up. And yeah, I don't have an outro.